Are we good? All right, we're going to start off with the video here.
Everyone good to go?
Good to go.
I'm going to click on Start Broadcast. Hi, everybody. Once again, we're going to have our virtual star party, working the telescopes.
I love science. I love communicating and exploring about space and astronomy. So when Google Plus came out, I thought, wouldn't it be cool if we could get a telescope streaming an image right into the Hangout?
We've got Mike Phillips, and he's in North Carolina. We've got Gary Ganella. What's your view, Gary?
The monkey heads in the upper part of Orion.
Before, this was impossible. But now we're getting people from Mexico and South America and South Africa, Malaysia. We're starting to capture the whole Earth because suddenly there is a way we're able to bring all these people together and put on a show.
Too close.
I think everyone's ready but Mike. Oh, I think I see something. Can you move it a little down, Mike? There it is. Oh, man. Look at that.
Being able to look out into space gives us context for how we live in our day-to-day experience. It shows us that we're part of this bigger universe.
Gary, you've got the rosette for me.
I do.
I mean, for us, for everyone to see, not just me.
Don't kid us. It's for you, Fred.
It's for me, yeah.
Now we have Saturn is green. You guys are just into tech like that.
All right, well, hello, everyone, and welcome to our Hangouts Fireside chat for all of you here in the room and for those of you online. This session is really about you. We're here essentially to answer your questions, hear your ideas, and hear your thoughts about Google Plus Hangouts, arguably one of the most exciting features on the Google Plus platform. So really excited to make this an interactive discussion with all of you. To get us started, I want to introduce our panel today. On the far side over there is Nikhil Singhal. Nikhil is the Director of Product for Real-Time Communications at Google. So that's not only Hangouts, but also Google Voice and Google Chat. Nikhil, before Google, founded and sold two companies, the most recent of which was SayNow. SayNow, for those of you who haven't heard of it, was a real-time social video conferencing tool that allowed celebrities and fans to connect using telephone conferencing and voicemail. If you haven't heard of it, it's likely that your daughters or sisters have heard of it, because 1 in 3 teenage girls in the country was using SayNow when Google acquired Nikhil's company in 2011. So that's Nikhil Singhal on the far side. And then next to Nikhil is Chi Chu. Chi is our engineering director for real-time communications at Google. He is based in Kirkland. Before he saw the light and came to Google, he worked for 14 years at Microsoft, working on a variety of things. Most recently, he worked on Xbox Live, particularly on the sort of Windows Live part of it, as you explained it to me, sort of porting the Xbox Live experience onto other devices. So this is how it's going to work for our conversation today. I'm going to start the conversation with Nikhil and Chi up here for a little bit, kind of set the groundwork for what Hangouts are, where they came from. We'll do that for about 10 or 15 minutes, and the bulk of the time, really for the 45 minutes we have left, we want to hear your questions. You can either ask them at the mics, there's one there or one there if you're here in the room, or if you're online and you want to ask them on our moderator series, use that link that we have up on the screen. If you're in the room and you're also shy and you want to do it via moderator, please feel free. We'll get through as many of them as we can. The link is right there. Just to get a sense for who's in the crowd before we start, so we have a sense of who you all are. How many folks in the room are developers? See a show of hands. Okay. And then how many folks in the room are media? There's some media folks here? Good. Yeah, we wanted to put a special call to media because we think the applications for Hangouts with media are pretty exciting. And then who here was at the session right before this on Hangout applications? Okay, good. So there's a strong group of folks here who have already been thinking about Hangout applications and some of the uses for them as developers. That's really useful. So I'm going to start us out with one more video to give us a sense for the ways in which Hangouts have been used, and then we'll start our conversation. I should probably introduce myself, actually, which I realize I haven't done. My name is Steve Grove, and I run our community partnerships team on Google+. Our mission is to partner with influential individuals, organizations, media companies, et cetera, to grow the Google Plus community. So we've been using Hangouts a lot with a lot of different partners since we launched last fall. So here's a look at some of the uses of Hangouts that we saw sort of early on in the days when we launched the platform.
Gavin, Chase, how you doing?
Oh my gosh! Are you kidding? Do it!
Are you wearing an apron? Whoa!
You're wearing your sweater. Her right knee's for the center of your foot. Show the ring, show the ring. It is gorgeous. We're having a wedding. This is gonna be so cool.
Well, Chi, let's start with you. Give us a bit of the background on Hangouts. Why did Google start Hangouts as a product, and then why did Google think about putting that product within Google Plus?
Sure. So actually at the very beginning, the team wasn't part of Google Plus. We were actually the last major team to join Google Plus. Initially, the team was working on video chat, so one-to-one video chat in Gmail, and we were working on the next version of that. And the team was in Kirkland and Sweden, and one of the things that we had done was we had set up a permanent video link between the two offices. And so we had that ongoing. So we were working on technology sort of in this area. But then something happened one day when I came home, and my wife was on the computer, she was working, and she had a video window going. But she wasn't really talking to anyone. It was just kind of there, and she was doing her work. I was like, who are you on a video chat with? And she said, it's Arden, who's my son. And I was like, where's Arden? And she said, well, he's upstairs. So there was a video link between upstairs and downstairs in my house. It's like, why in the world are you doing that? It's like, and her answer was, well, he's supposed to be studying, so I banned him from downstairs where he gets distracted. He's supposed to be up in his room, but he's lonely. And so they just had a video link between the two each other just to keep each other company. And that made me sort of think about like, okay, when I was in college, I couldn't study when I was sitting alone in my room. I always went down to the common room and I hung around with other people and we didn't really talk, we just sort of studied together. I was happier and more productive when I was just kind of around people. And I noticed that in our engineering teams also, when like we would be in video calls together and we would debug together, and sometimes there would be long periods of silence, but it just worked better when people were accessible and they could ask something at sort of a spur of the moment. So that was the spark of the idea of video for something more than just having a meeting, but really just to hang around with each other, to keep each other company.
So it wasn't directed conversation, it was actually having an ambient conversation.
Yeah, this ambient conversation. So that was, I guess, just the spark of the idea. It was really kind of early. It wasn't really well formed at that time. But about that time, this is at the end of 2010, about 6 months before we released Google+, I was in Mountain View, and Sergey and Vic and Bez called me into a meeting and sort of pulled me in to talk to me, to convince me to help Google Plus by adding chat support, text chat support to Google Plus. Since we weren't part of Google Plus, he was sort of asking to lend a hand. And so of course I said, yeah, we'll do that. But I had this idea I wanted to run by you. And so I explained this idea of an ambient video sort of thing where multiple people can kind of come in and go in and out. And they started to get it. And so I then opened my laptop and I joined into that permanent video link. So I was in California, I joined into this permanent link between Kirkland and Stockholm. And then all of a sudden, there were engineers in those two sites and having this like conversation with Sergey and Vic and Bez. And it was kind of cool. And like people were really excited about that. And so that little spark kind of turned into a small flame. And Sergey sort of said, wow, this is kind of a neat idea, but we're trying to ship in like 6 months. And you just have this nugget of idea. It's going to take us a long time to like even prototype it. Mm-hmm. And the team had been working on it, so I said, no, it's like 5 lines of code. So Sergey says, well, then go and let's do it right now. And like I had a flight to catch in 2 hours, so I said, I have to go. And Sergey said, well, you said it's like 5 lines of code, so just go do it. So he's kind of calling my bluff, right? So they pulled me over to a Google Plus engineer, and they had me explain how to do this. They didn't let me touch the code because I'm management overhead, and they don't let me near the actual code anymore. So I explained kind of how to do it. It was really fast, and then I said, okay, I really have to go. I got to catch a flight, when I land, I'll call back and see how you're doing, and then and help from there. So I took off, and the engineer hadn't even compiled the code yet. He kept on working on it, and I left. I landed in Seattle. I called him from the airport just to find the engineer and say, like, okay, how's it going? Do you need any help? And in that span of 3 hours, that engineer had finished. He had built a new release, and he had pushed that server out to the company. And as soon as I logged in, Vic hit me with a Hangout invite. I joined there, and there was Vic with like a dozen people, this big glass of wine, and he goes, "Gee, we're in a Hangout!" And Sergey was there, and then like the Google Plus leadership was there, and I didn't know them all, so he introduced me to them, and I was like, wow, that's kind of cool. So I invited in people from Sydney in my team, and from Stockholm and Kirkland, so I invited them in, and we sort of had this ambient conversation where people brought other people in, and that conversation lasted, like I landed at 9 o'clock, it lasted at least till 3 a.m. And so like
So the first ever Hangout lasted like 5
hours. The first ever
hours.
Hangout lasted like more than 6 hours.
Now you could have launched this in Gmail or in other places at Google. What about launching Hangouts within Google Plus makes it really unique?
Well, you know, I think the part of the magic is this ambient one. You can do the direct conversations, and I think it's really important. But also, I think the part of the extra magic that we have, I think, is this ability for people to connect with others and then have friends of friends bring in others, and the social graph can grow and spread. I've met a lot of amazing people, and just before a session, I saw a lot of people I've met from around the world through Hangouts, and I think that connection has been really, really powerful, and I think it's been a unique part of Hangouts.
As a social experience.
Yeah, absolutely.
Nikhil, I'd like to hear from you a little bit about what we've seen in terms of how Hangouts have been used by various groups since launch. To kind of get into that topic, let's play a little clip of one group that has used Hangouts a lot right from the beginning, and that's the media. Let's watch a few clips from media organizations.
Welcome to the AC360 Google Plus page. Add us to your circles so you can get the latest updates and behind-the-scenes look at the show.
We're going to be conducting Google Hangouts from time to time to connect people in every corner of the country to talk about topics related to Campaign 2012. Sarah, you're the reporter in this crowd. What is going on with religion these days in the age of the internet?
You were talking about how religion is surviving in this new age, and I'd say it's actually thriving.
I'm Maria Bartiromo at the New York Stock Exchange. Big shout out to all my friends on Google Plus.
You think back, Saturday, semifinals, what just kind of pops in your mind?
Uneven play.
The Kentucky-Louisville game especially was sloppy all the way around.
I thought the first game was totally entertaining. You guys are all nuts.
NBC Bay Area's George Kitayama is live at SFO, and he's live via Google Plus with us right now because it's too dangerous to use our live truck with a mask going up there. So he's talking to us live over the internet. George, what can you tell us?
We have 61 flights canceled.
We wanted to say thanks to everyone who was on our cyber couch today. We hope that you enjoy your weekend.
Good evening, I'm Angie Bailey.
And I'm Sarah Hill. Thanks for joining us. KMUH's Kristen James worked that story of Brian Rankin.
I'm Jake Tapper. I'm the senior White House correspondent for ABC News. Welcome to this week's inaugural Google Plus Hangout for a discussion of election year politics. So Emily, I think you have the next one, and your question is about the U.S. Supreme Court.
If the Supreme Court rules that all or a portion of Obamacare is unconstitutional, are there any positives that President Obama could get out of that decision?
I think whatever happens, it's probably not going to be determinative of this election. I think, though, there's a benefit, I think, to President Obama if that happens.
Anybody that has Google Plus can use it. It's sort of the concept of a watch party at home where you'd be watching a speech on your couch, except you use it from your laptops. It was definitely the magic of technology made it happen, and you can bring people in to be able to talk about the issues that are driving the day.
I think this is going to be terrific.
So Nikhil, you launch a product like this, you sort of have a sense for how you think it's going to be used, and then it's out in the wild and people start using it. What can you tell us about how Hangouts have been used since launch that has been instructive for you about the technology?
Yeah, so we launched it almost exactly a year ago, and what attracted me to Hangouts initially was we didn't want to just do video conferencing. I think there's a lot of solutions out there for video calling, and what really Google is very focused on innovating here. And I think when you look at social communities and real-time communication, we're kind of in the first and second inning. Mm-hmm. Like there's lots and lots of interesting use cases. We saw chat roulette get born about 3-4 years ago. clearly interesting. It's one way to describe it. There's been lots and lots of other experiments, but no one's really figured it out. And so I think she had this instinct, the team had this instinct, we launched it, and within the first few months, the stories just started to come in. Some of the most notable, I think, there was a kid who was rushed to the emergency room in a local hospital. The doctor wasn't able to perform the surgery, and so the 15, 16-year-old kid was essentially in a life-threatening situation, and someone had the insight to actually post to Google+, and they were able to connect with a doctor in a local city and actually using video guide him through the surgery, save the child's life, right? Kind of very, very, certainly something different was going on there. In Calcutta, there's an orphanage of hundreds and hundreds of kids who don't speak English. And the way to get out of an orphanage is largely to have language. And English is not an easy language to pick up from an orphanage where they don't really talk to you in English. And so local university professors volunteer their time to actually teach English in an auditorium much like this to kids using Hangouts. Probably the most memorable one that I heard was one of the father-in-laws of a Hangout user was diagnosed with Parkinson's, and he knew that his time where he was able to speak and he was able to control his hands was limited, and so he pulled together all of his grandkids into a Hangout and taught them how to tie a bow tie. And that way, Hangouts has really struck a nerve, an emotional nerve and a social nerve. And what we've done as a team is actually we've been blessed with the community grabbing hold and taking it in so many places that we've essentially turned into a highly reactive team. And one of the first things we noticed was that as soon as these conversations started to be formed, people wanted the ability to share them. And the concept of sharing a conversation isn't actually possible without a product like ours. And so initially it was people recording those conversations using their own screen capture software, putting them on disk, and then uploading them. But then we looked at each other and we said, well, clearly with Google, YouTube is potentially the best video distribution platform in the world. Why don't we connect those two things together? And what we launched was Hangouts on Air, which was launched last winter essentially as a way for people to have a conversation and distribute it on the internet. And everyday users were able to do that for the first time, get a stage where they can actually have a public conversation. But then the media grabbed it because they wanted to find conversations, elicit conversations, and create new conversations. And I think that maybe the mantra that we've started to think about is Hangouts are a great tool to connect you with people that you know you want to have a conversation with. But also, our goal is to find conversations you didn't think you wanted to have. And I think that's what's really magical about what we've seen so far.
Discovering these conversations that you wouldn't have otherwise had access to. Since we've started and seen media use Hangouts more and more, you'd have had a chance to meet with a couple of broadcasters. Tell our friends here a little bit about what you've heard from the media and other partners who clearly have video technology to create conversations, but are really grabbing onto Hangouts as a way to engage audiences.
Yeah, and so there's two things that we continue to hear, and they have a lot to do with the two things I mentioned. One is people look at Hangouts as a way to minimize the satellite truck. So it's a satellite truck in your pocket for the first time. And so as a team, we've been developing technology to improve the quality of the video, to think about vetting. So how do I make sure that the participants and the conversation's curated? How do I make sure that the conversation's interactive? And I think we're even going to show some things about that. And so they look at it as a replacement for being able to pull together what they usually do with studios and cameras and very expensive gear, right? That's kind of one side. But then you have a situation like what Sarah Hill did. She's a broadcaster, a very talented broadcaster that is a local affiliate in Missouri, and she's been using Google Plus to find interesting conversations. So during the Montreal protests, she found someone hanging out live in Montreal who was actually broadcasting the protest from their, I think it was their laptop in that case. Well, people live stream all the time. What made this unique was Sarah jumped in the Hangout, broadcasted on television, and had a live conversation. And so when you think about the capability of being able to take a conversation, find a conversation on a breaking news event, and be able to push it out to the rest of the world, that's something that I think all broadcasters are excited about, and they see the potential there.
Yeah, there's just a huge possibility for citizen reporting there, right, with mobile. Well, I want to give folks here in the audience and folks online a chance to ask questions. So if you have one, please start to line up at the mics. We'll also check the moderator queue in a second. But before we head to audience questions, Chi, I'd like to hear a little more from you about Hangout apps, because when Hangouts launched, it was just this multi-person video conversation platform within Google+, and then you launched Hangout apps. So tell us a little bit about what does a developer need to know to create a really excellent Hangout app?
Well, as Nikhil was saying, very early on, people started using the Hangouts in ways that we didn't imagine that they would. They really pushed the envelopes of what we had designed. And so it was very evident, very early on, that we would need a way of enabling people to be creative, because people would think about things that we never thought of. And I think the best way of doing that is to enable this platform. So the whole intent around that platform was to allow people to take video and their apps, the apps that they already have, and make them better by adding video to it. Make them better by making them more collaborative and more real time. And the whole platform effort we have around that is just to really facilitate new experiences and new ideas, and to allow developers to really enhance their applications. The biggest takeaway I have around the whole platform is that we try to make the Hangout API platform really simple and built upon the notion that anything that you can do in your app already on the web, you can keep it and just add Hangouts to it. You don't have to redesign it, you don't have to re-architect it, it's just adding. You can take your app and iframe it into a Hangout, and then add the multi-person and the video capabilities onto it and extend it. We did a session just now, just prior to this one, and we have a code lab at 4 o'clock today. We can help people go through that. And then the other thing I'd have people from developers understand for us from this point, especially here, but ongoing, is like our approach to the platform is really to find out what people are trying to do and enable that. So the feedback that you give us on, hey, I'm trying to do X, Y, or Z thing, really helps us plan and provide what people need. So that feedback loop here today, but also just online, ongoing, is incredibly valuable to us.
So I pulled up sort of an unofficial site called hangoutapps.com that has a bunch of these Hangout apps listed. It's a good sort of start for inspiration for people thinking about what types of apps to develop. What can you say about sort of the social dynamics of multi-person video chat that a developer could say, okay, well, that's the kind of situation in which like a Hangout makes sense around that application? Do you have some insight there?
Well, whenever you have an app where multiple people are collaborating or contributing to, and sometimes it's asynchronous, right? One person goes in and another person comes in later, but once in a while they come in and they start using it and modifying and contributing at the same time. That sort of flow is great candidate for a Hangout, right? And allowing people to work on things asynchronously and also make it come alive when it's in Hangout, and then continue afterwards. Like from existing apps and productivity apps, I think that's really, really important. The dynamic for sort of a fun sort of entertainment app inside a Hangout, I think that there are a couple of things that you really have to think about. And one is that like oftentimes people are shooting the breeze or hanging around and doing whatever, and then someone will start using an app. And then it will kind of be fun, and it will spread throughout the rest of the Hangout app. So a great Hangout app allows for just 1 or 2 people to use it, even in a group of 10, like 1 or 2 people to start use it and get some value out of it, and then have other people see it and sort of virally get that. It also allows people to come and go, because in a Hangout, someone can leave or someone can join. So it allows a free flow of people coming in and out. If you think about the dynamics of that, which happens in real life as well, like 2 people start playing cards, someone joins, and then someone else comes in later, like think about those dynamics. I think facilitating what really happens in real life, like that's what you want to think about when you build apps.
Yeah, I think the online poker app is one of those really natural use cases for people coming together.
Absolutely.
It's probably worth pointing out that there's sort of two sets of apps or two styles of apps that we've been seeing. I think one are the YouTube, poker, kind of mainstream apps that are activities that if you take a group of people and you're essentially in a room, what could you give them to keep them busy, to keep them occupied? The most successful app that actually we have is our Google Effects app. And we're seeing a lot of developers build almost tools or enhancements to the video conversation. And these, if you look at a Hangout, are the ones that show up on the left side. They're not designed to be a service or an activity in and of themselves. They're actually designed to say, well, if you're in a conversation, what could we do with the audio, the video, or the management of the conversation that would really make the conversation more effective? And I think that both are going to be interesting areas of exploration as we start to see developers.
Yeah, those extensions that sort of extend and enhance the existing conversation, I think are ones that you don't need to get the consensus of other people. Any one person can add value, and everyone sees what's happening, and it's like, oh, how do I do that, right? Like the lower third app or the comment tracker app. I mean, there are a bunch of things like that which really help do well on that sort of forum.
One of my favorite Hangout Effects apps was Conan Hair, which we launched for a Hangout we did with Conan O'Brien, in which you can essentially place a giant frock of orange hair on top of your head as you're hanging out and play like you're a late night talk
Yeah, of
show
course,
host.
Conan threatened to sue us for that one, so you got to be careful with those.
Yeah, indeed. You're just kidding, of course.
Yeah.
Let's take some questions. What questions do we have in the audience for Chi and Nikhil on Hangouts? Yeah.
Hi, Brian Nagy with Code 42 Software. There's been a lot, using the webcam's pretty easy, using your camera on your phone's pretty easy. But what about when you want to broadcast a group of people? What kind of camera and interface to a computer? What would you recommend? How do you get the image from a HDMI camcorder into the computer to broadcast?
Well, the interfaces that we use to connect to the camera are the standard operating system interfaces, like WTIA on Windows. So we will take in the input from the operating system. Sometimes people want to pipe in other video sources that aren't directly cameras, and there are soft cam emulators that present themselves as cameras, but we'll just have a standard interface. There are some high-end tools like Blackmagic Intensity Pro, which we use very successfully. I think there are a bunch of things like that that you can look at. At the end of the day, at this point, the resolution of it is capped, so we don't go to HD yet. It's certainly something that we're definitely looking into. But I think that those are the tools that I would look at, right?
Thank you.
Over here.
Hi, Ryan Nichols with Podio. I'm interested to hear you guys talk a little bit about enterprise applications of Hangouts, both your vision for Hangouts in the enterprise, as well as I'm just curious how you're using it internally. I'm curious whether your own salespeople are hanging out with customers and that sort of thing.
Yeah, so I joined Google about 18 months ago, and probably my first day, I was struck by the fact that almost every conference room has video conferencing equipment, and almost all meetings are video meetings.
When you joined, you tried to have a phone conversation with me.
I was like, can I give you a call?
And I was like, I don't have a phone.
I only hang out.
Yeah, so they just don't give phones to employees, and so I did 5 phone calls a day before I joined Google. I've done 4 since I've been at Google. Like, we just use our video conferencing systems internally, which is one of the sort of ways we've gotten to understand the sort of use cases that Chi referred to. But so today, just to give you a sense of how Google uses Hangouts, we do over 10,000 Hangouts every day at Google to kind of connect our company.
We run our business on Hangouts.
Yeah. And so that's really changed.
10,000 a day.
10,000 a day, actually slightly more. So that has really changed the sort of the way that people have interactions. It's also made it possible for the Hangout team to be largely in Kirkland and in Stockholm. And so it's not surprising that there's a great pent-up demand on the enterprise side. And what we've done is we've been slowly releasing our services to the enterprise crowd. There's a number of apps that actually exist within Hangouts that are almost what I would call productivity apps. Our Google Docs integrations first class. YouTube has been used for webinars. Screen share is a very popular case. So I think that we don't have anything to announce today, but I think that it's clear to say that part of the reason why we invest so heavily internally in technologies like Hangouts is to understand the opportunity for enterprises. And we've been very encouraged by the initial results.
I think that it's like we for Google have found that it actually makes our engineering and our business more efficient. Like if you do an interview over a phone, you're missing a lot of the nuance of the conversation. You're missing reading the body language. Like you don't have as high quality a read on the person you're talking to. So like we firmly believe, especially as distributed as Google is, like if you use things like video technology and it's high quality, you will make your business more efficient. Right? So we think of it as actually a competitive advantage.
And there's actually an insight that we had early in the launch of Google+. You know, we always think that there's like the enterprise use case, and the enterprise use case is when you're serious and you have directed conversations and they're private and access controlled. Then there's this social kind of lightweight, you know, fun, maybe you meet someone new type of thing. Well, we started to see people like Michael Dell actually use Hangouts as a way to understand how people think about Dell products. Customer support apps where people would use video calling as a way to actually engage in the public. So the notion of an unstructured conversation in the enterprise is actually a really, really ripe area to innovate. And I think you'll see the blending of social and enterprise really delivering on a new style of communication that I think we're just starting to see with you.
There's an authenticity you get in that conversation face-to-face about a product that you just don't get in comments and things like that.
That's right.
The top voted question on moderator right now is really a good one. It comes from Zizagoo, and it is the following. Talk, Google Plus Messenger, Hangouts, and Voice all have overlapping features while remaining separate. Can we expect better consolidation between these down the road? Cal?
Yeah, so I think we've done an incredibly poor job of servicing our users here. I think that Google has lots and lots of, we have all the code to make a seamless communication experience for end users, but they live in lots of different products. We're going to fix that. We are highly, highly committed to providing a single, clean, beautiful user experience for having real-time communication. It will happen. We don't have anything to announce, but it is an investment that we care deeply about.
Across all these different services as
across
well.
Across all surfaces.
Across all devices.
That's right.
Clearly both of your titles are Director of Product Engineering for real-time communications, not just Hangouts.
That's right.
Let's go over here. Next question.
Yes, hi, my name is Justin Davenport. I'm with Virginia Tech. What I'm curious of is on the same enterprise topic. Has there been any discussion about integrating H323 or SIP endpoints into Google+? And have you looked at any teaching or education use cases?
Can I ask you, like, what is it that you want out of the SIP, out of both SIP and H232?
Well, we have lots of faculty that are looking for more advanced teaching methods, and they see the commercial technology of Google+, and they expect something like that in the classroom or delivered online. Something beyond just a TV and a H323 link between two classrooms.
So I'm still not quite clear on what is it that you want specifically from the 323 and also SIP. Like,
well, I'm sorry, it's two separate issues. I guess the first question is, let's say if we had 20 students sitting at home, a faculty in their office, do you see a use case for that for Google Plus in the future?
So this is actually a very common thing that we will do, or someone will ask for a specific piece of functionality, like I want SIP integration. And what we really want to do is we want to dig in a layer deeper and say, hey, what is the scenario that you want? And what I hear from you is like, we want to have the ability for teachers to have a conversation, a class or lecture, and for people at home, students, to not simply join in the Hangout, but also consume it in a really cheap, easy, quick way. And we definitely want to solve that scenario. That's like sort of, Hangouts on Air is sort of one format of that, although currently Hangouts on Air require you to broadcast to the entire world. But the notion of wanting to filter that down to a circle and broadcast that to a subset is definitely something that we've heard the requests for, and we definitely recognize there is the need there.
So in my opinion, I think there's certain use cases for Hangouts where Hangouts is always just a better answer. I think office hours are somewhat broken today. And what I mean by that is when I was in college, and that was a while ago, but usually what would happen is a professor would sit in their room or the teaching assistant and they'd wait, and then you would essentially have a student walk in. And the student would walk in, maybe 20 minutes in, and they would ask a question about problem set number 2. You'd answer the question, and then the student would leave. Another guy would come in and ask the same question, and they would repeat the same question. And what would happen is then there was a handful of people that actually had gone to office hours who seemed to have the insight, and the people that didn't, right? So in my opinion, every office hour in the world for every institution should be always run with a Hangout in mind, because then you can broadcast, people can jump in, they can actually ask the questions, you could record, you can play it back, you can clip the section that is actually interesting, share it to the world. This we are committed to do. The product today actually does a fairly good job. We're starting to see people come in. There has been some concerns around privacy. We haven't heard the technical concern that you mentioned, but I suspect there is probably issues around.
But what we're doing, the way that we're doing this, you could connect to it via a flash player or a video tag or something really simple like that.
So I mean, it's an area that we're really interested in investing in. Is medicine and education are two of the verticals that we're really, I would say hyper investing in.
There's just a lot of efficiencies when you start taking a Hangout from just being the 10 people there and then making it a broadcast Hangout. Yeah. Let's go over here.
Hi, Mike Corbett, Android Headlines. I was wondering if it would be possible in the future, and I know you can't talk about some future things, but if Hangouts on Air was planned for mobile in the future.
You mean plan to join, broadcast, I guess both.
This is also the number 2 question on the moderator right now.
Yeah, so probably I'll kind of, maybe I'll club them all together. Sure. I would say essentially everything that we do on the desktop, the plan and the intention is for us to have them available on all surfaces. So as far as I know, we don't have a single feature that is desktop specific. It turns out from a sequencing point of view, as you point out, both our platform for apps as well as our Hangout on Air product line and our feature set are the two that we don't currently have support. I think we took a big step today actually by launching our tablet support, which had Hangouts fully integrated, which is one of the most commonly asked questions, and the mobile phone support. And for those of you that haven't done a video call on a tablet, it's very different than you may think. Think about where you hold your phone, where you hold your tablet, and where you hold your desktop in your house, right? So when you hold a tablet and you have a video conversation, and it's with your friends and family, particularly those that you don't see very often, you hold it on the left and you hold it on the right. It's almost like you're hugging the person and you're in this conversation. That degree of intimacy changes the style of the conversation. So we're really excited about the fact that we're pushing now on all of our different surfaces, but it is a clear investment that we will have those capabilities, but we don't have a time frame that we can announce.
Any time when you see something that's not on one of those platforms, the answer why it's not there is almost certainly either a technical limitation where we can't but we want to, or our engineers just aren't typing fast enough, and we need to get them to type faster.
More coffee.
More coffee.
A lot of the questions in the moderator are asking about television, and since you mentioned tablet, it might be a good time to address
That was
this
actually
one.
my second question was about the queue.
It really?
Would the queue be possible to have Hangouts on it?
You can
I mean, it is running it is running ICS, so.
I think that's something we'll have to take a look at with the Google TV guys.
Yeah, so the iOS application supports airtime, natively. And so the idea of, I think that is embedded in your question, which is, can I take a Hangout and make it work on a television? Right, it's a very classic question. It's a great question. With iOS, we're able to start seeing that. Clearly, we're committed to doing that on the Google stack as well.
You can imagine putting your television or your tablet at one of the dinner chairs at dinner time and actually enjoying a meal with somebody who's actually not there. Let's go over here.
Hi, I just want to follow up on the enterprise question before. So in large corporations, you often have these kind of meetings where you're broadcasting to everybody. And it's a really expensive way to communicate to folks. Hangouts offer another solution for us. And I'm just wondering, is there a way to have folks join a Hangout without having to have the participation? So if you can imagine 40,000 people needing to join a Hangout, we don't really want to have 40,000 people join a Hangout per se, but we'd love to be able to broadcast and communicate with them that way.
So if I could reframe your question, I think what you're kind of asking for is if you want people to be able to join but not actually participate, but consume it, you're actually asking for like Hangouts on Air, but restricted to your company. Is that fair?
Or maybe, in some ways, participate. Maybe voting or something like that.
So
but just some ideas to help out the use cases.
So like the notion of these use cases, I think, are great, and this is a very common thing that we've had a lot of requests for. What Steve has up here is an app that we're actually building, is using the platform. And what this does is it combines Hangouts with Moderator. So someone can view a Hangout, and then at the same time, they can, over there on the left side, they can ask a question. And then other people can vote on that question. Oh yeah, I want to ask that question. Right. And then the people inside the Hangout, whoever's presenting over it, will see those questions, and they'll see them bubble up, and they can respond to it. And this is a platform aspect that we want to bring forth to allow the scenarios like what you're just talking about, as well as many other scenarios that the media has been asking for.
So at Google, you say you have 10,000 of these a day, I guess, right? Do you see the need for sort of broadcast ideas?
We definitely have sort of the one-to-many meetings. Like right now, Hangouts are limited to 10, but we often have meetings where there are a few people speaking, but there may be a large team of 100 who want to attend that meeting and watch it. Yeah, there's no question that we have that.
Yeah, I mean, the use case is typically either as just a pure streaming use case, which is a handful of people want to be able to speak, and they want to be able to reach the masses. Get a lot of questions around record, so the ability to have a conversation and have it recorded, and then be able to play it back for future use. And then the third is the key point that she raised, which was when the audience is able to be in that view mode, how can you have that subtle interaction? Being inside the video conversation is heavyweight, and usually you have to have a speaking role. Being able to say, I think that's a great question, or being able to submit your own question without coming up to the mic in this example. I mean, being able to do that on what we call Google Moderator. This is, if you were to club this together, this is the #1 ask from broadcasters today. Yeah. We have a product that's broadcasting, but it's how can I engage the audience that's watching in addition to engage the audience that is participating?
Yeah, we did a hangout with President Obama in early February in which questions were submitted on Moderator, but we did that sort of over on YouTube and had to port those back over into Google Plus to sort of not only have the 5 people in the hangout asking questions of the president, but insert some of those top voted questions as well. So with this application, I think it's going to get a lot more seamless. Thanks for the question. It was a really good one. One of the top voted questions here that is somewhat related is, why only 10? Why only 10 people in a hangout?
Because it's more than 5 and less than 15.
That's a great answer.
So,
next.
Yeah. So if you, I don't know if you've ever been at a sort of a dinner conversation where you had 15 people at the table. Like when you have 15 people at the table, you don't have one conversation unless it's a business meeting where there's order to it and all that sort of stuff. If it's a social sort of dinner table at that size, it shards into multiple conversations. Our observation, just using the product, is that somewhere above 10, the conversation starts getting cumbersome. Too many people interrupt each other, or people feel frustrated because they want to turn to talk and all that sort of stuff. And when we were using it ourselves at 15, it wasn't a great conversation. So it's a social sort of thing.
It's not a technical limit. It's simply.
Well, we had a bug that accidentally came out a few months ago, where we pushed a build where the server, where the cap was removed, and we had a 40-person hangout out in the public, and people got to experience that the technology could hold up to a pretty large number, but the conversation just couldn't handle.
Shouting match.
It was everyone would try to speak, and it was stepping on each other's toes. It wasn't a healthy conversation. Now at the same time, if you have a room of 10, and let's say our limit was 20, and your buddy wants to come in, you're not really going to tell them no. So you're going to allow it to go to 11. And then another friend comes and say, oh, hey, let me in there. And so you're going to allow it to go to 12. And then another person comes in who wants to get in there, and you're going to allow it to go to 15 and 20. Because people, you're not going to say no to your friends. Say, oh, hey, we have 10 right now, and that's a little bit too many, so please don't come in. So essentially, we'll help you by
Good
putting that
fences
limit.
make
Yeah,
good neighbors.
it's kind
Yeah.
of,
I think that part of the reason why we did Hangouts on Air was also to recognize that when you're in that
Absolutely.
that mode
Yeah.
where you are kind of hosted, it's to allow people to actually participate. In
And
the
I would say, I mean, you
conversation.
look at broadcasters using Hangouts, and it's rare that a broadcaster like CNN or ABC will actually have 10 people. Usually it's like 3 to 6, because even beyond that, if you're trying to broadcast a conversation that flows with some kind of regularity, it's sort of in some ways mirrors like the talking head format of cable television, right? When you're watching Fox or MSNBC, there's never much more than 3 or 4 blocks on the screen. It's just, there's too much to handle for an audience once you get past that limit. Let's go over here.
I'm Colin Jones. I'm interested in where you're going with HD. We're starting to see 4K cameras drop into the sort of prosumer price range, and particularly for medical applications, that type of resolution is pretty exciting, and even just HD is much, well, more is better, right, in this case. So I'm interested in both your short and long-term plans for higher resolutions.
Sure. Well, we're always looking at how we can improve the media quality. That's incredibly important. Not only, I think, more pixels on the screen, but also frame rate. Like getting up to the 30 frames per second was important for the responsiveness and the overall experience. Definitely something we're looking into. There are lots of challenges around doing that. As you push up the frame rate and the resolution, you challenge the CPU. You might not be able to hit certain classes of machines and that sort of things. So it takes a lot of tuning on our part. We don't have anything to announce right now, but there's no question that we're going to be moving in that direction. One of the things we do also recognize is that when you want to see like high resolution X-rays or something like that, where you're then casting another screen or a window, we actually adjust the resolution. So we'll go HD and above resolution on a screencast, and we'll drop the frame rate down to like 5 per second in order for you to get that really nice, crisp HD screen. So we don't have a specific timeline or anything to announce, but the philosophy I'd have you understand is like we're definitely pushing that direction. We're going to push the envelope as hard as we can on the overall quality of the audio and the video, but respecting the broad array of hardware devices that we have to support.
Here's an interesting question from Tim. We've been talking a lot about ambient conversations, but what about scheduled conversations? Tim asks, what about Hangouts integration with Google Calendar so you can directly schedule a Hangout and then invite users? Is that something that we're thinking about?
Yeah, I mean, we're definitely moving in the direction of moving the Google product stack and integrating it more thoroughly with Hangouts. So I think it's safe to say that you'll see Hangouts appear in your favorite Google products more readily. Having said that, one of the announcements we are making today is the Google Plus Events product. And so for the first time, we've made it relatively simple for users that say have a family circle to be able to schedule that using Google Plus Events. It's literally a click, create an event. It's the special type called a Hangout event. There'll be a link. It'll show up in your calendar. You'll be able to join. You'll get notified on mobile. It's a great way of actually having kind of that scheduled conversation, and it leverages the groups and relationships you've already created on Google Plus.
And as Nikhil said, that does show up on your calendar, and so you get all the calendar functionality there. And one of the subtle points I know was brought out earlier is that creates a Hangout location URL that's static, persistent. So at the time that you create that event, you now have a Hangout URL that you can join at any point. You don't have to go through the create at the time and invite everyone sort of thing that you do with the ambient conversations.
Yeah, and I think inherent in that question is there has been a deep investment that you're going to start seeing come out over the summer around making that directed use case, which is a very common use case. It's, I want to call grandma, I want to call my brother. Making that simpler and easier, reducing the friction, making that available on all services. This has been a big investment the team's made. We feel like we've done really interesting work around the social and the ambient use case. We really want to get that directed right, and this is the first step in doing that.
One of the tricks that some folks in our team have sort of figured out and used for the events is like, if you have a recurring Hangout like once a week, you could create an event that's actually scheduled out, say, next year, and that creates a Hangout link that you can use every week, all the time, week after week after week, so the same location. So a common request that we've had is like, I'd like to have a static URL so I can just like know where to go. Like I know where to go, I just have it like posted somewhere and I can bookmark it. And so with events, you can effectively do that.
So your wife and your son can have their homework Hangout always open.
That's right.
Check in
That's right.
doing his homework. We got a few more minutes left. Let's try to get as many questions as we can. Next.
Hi, my name is Christopher. My question kind of has to do with more of a general in terms of Hangout environment for individual. And the best way I can explain is through kind of an experience that I had using Hangouts, whereby my wife and I was in Boston at the time, she was in Seattle. It was our anniversary. And we thought, oh, we can start a Hangout to have dinner together. But then I have this really dangly brick wall behind me, and she has this really, like, crappy tree with nothing on the back of it. And the idea was that I was like, oh, I really wish I could just, take a 2-minute clip of where we had dinner once and have it basically go and compress and kind of overlap upon that video. And so that you have that general environment and that we are having dinner in a place that we kind of can see not only ourselves, but in the background, which is less of a distraction, but more of a visual appealing experience. And secondly, it would be more of two, as well as friends and I, we love drinking at a bar. But we're never together. But it would be nice to go in and then have in a bar environment where we can just sit there and have a drink together. And it actually feel like a bar environment in some sense. And I understand that visualizations can be very complex, but you're Google, so it shouldn't be impossible.
That's pretty interesting.
Yeah, if you asked if he was like jumping out of an airplane at the same time, then maybe we get excited about that.
Yeah, putting that in the blimp would be like, all you need to do. It's a good request.
I guess that's a general request and a hard question. Do you have anything to do with, compressing this?
We're definitely looking at what interesting things can you do with a video stream. Like effects was sort of one step along the way, and we're continuing that forward. Like, we don't have any specific, and I'll definitely take that as feedback of a request that we.
It's a great use case.
Yeah,
yeah.
I mean, it brings up this point of context, right? Like the context within which you're having a conversation makes all the difference. So whether you're starting a Hangout based off an article you've discovered, or in the context of a bar you've been at, or whatever, it's like setting that right tone to have the right kind of conversation.
Like in the video that you showed, this girl had a bunch of books in the background.
Uh-huh.
And I have ADD, so the first thing I'll do is like, oh, what books is that?
Uh-huh.
I'm totally non-focused in the background itself. It's just more of the person.
Right. Yeah, no, it makes a difference.
We tend to do that when we do videos.
Yeah. Yes.
Hi, my name is Brent. One of the favorite Hangouts I've ever done was at the top of a hiking trail where I happened to catch a 3G signal enough to be able to do a Hangout out to my parents and just show them this amazing view that I saw. I also know several people who are in the sign language interpreting field, and they see this as being a good benefit for deaf and hard of hearing community. The problem I see is, especially in low bandwidth situations, it seems like Google Plus prioritizes audio over video and tries to keep the audio connection going as much as possible. Are there any plans of making it so that you can potentially tell the Hangout to prioritize the video signal over audio, or maybe that audio isn't needed at all and put all the bandwidth towards the video?
Well, so that's really interesting. So I'm hard of hearing as well, and so I do sign language. So I really care a lot about that scenario. For the majority of use case, it is true that we think that audio is extremely important. If the audio is laggy, or if it's choppy, or sort of turns a robot-y voice, it's hard to have a conversation. If you start dropping video frames, you can still have a conversation if the audio is clean. But I think that what you're describing is actually a really important case as well. There are a few things that we're doing with that. We're experimenting with the low bandwidth mode, and we drop the resolution but keep the frames higher. We do that on the download, and we're looking at playing around with the upload, and we're playing around with automatic detection for that. The other thing is, if you just simply mute your microphone, then that will give us a signal that we're going to prioritize that. And if everyone has to do that, we will adjust that, because when we don't detect audio, we will give that bandwidth to the video. So there are a few things that you can do, but we're also working to make that better.
Okay, is that done today? If you mute the audio, does it prioritize video completely?
Well, it adjusts. So when you aren't sending any audio, then when you aren't sending any audio, then we don't consume the bandwidth for that.
Okay, great, thank you.
Absolutely.
Let's take one more question.
Hi, my name's Andrew. I helped organize a 48-hour code jam among a bunch of college students, but we purposely made it so we weren't at a same place. We were a bunch of different places, and we were trying to figure out something to use. So we ended up trying to use Hangouts, but like Hangouts on Air, I believe, was invite only, so we couldn't get access to that. So we set up this complicated rebroadcasting thing to try to get to broadcast the audience, and in the end, it didn't work because our listeners for each Hangout would time out after I think it was an hour and a half. And there was also this other problem of we can only share one screen at a time, and we couldn't get multiple people to share screens because once someone shares a screen, it overrides the main screen. And the last thing I just wanted to mention is it was really hard to get recording to work because we had this complicated thing. I didn't really have a question. It was just a bunch of like sharing my experience with you.
Yeah, so let me maybe tease that apart a little bit. So Hangouts on Air launched a few months ago generally, and it's now at 100% across the world. So for most countries in the world, you actually can have Hangouts on Air. And so during that, we know we had so much demand. We really wanted to make sure that when people are broadcasting themselves, it's important for the quality to be good. So we feel like we're there now.
And that includes recording.
That includes recording. So I think if you were to try it again, you'd be able to take advantage of that. When it comes to being able to, what takes over the main image, we actually allow the user to click on what we call the film strip, which is the set of images underneath the Hangout. And anytime you click on one of those images, it actually changes the main screen image, and it actually would affect what's being broadcast. So this is a way for President Obama to be in a Hangout, and then you can actually click over to someone who's talking if you want to override the default.
So multiple people can screencast at a time, and we do that every day. Lots of people will simultaneously screencast.
Okay. Well, when we did it, when we clicked on or when we clicked share screen, it would override the other person's, and then it would kick them back to their webcam. When we did it.
You should give it a try again. It shouldn't do that anymore.
Okay. And then I guess the only other comment I have is you said that when you do screen sharing, it prioritizes the quality but reduces the frame rate.
It prioritizes resolution over frame rate.
Yeah. We were also trying to develop games, so it was like we were trying to show off this crazy thing, and it was running at 2 FPS. So.
No, one of the things that we should actually take a look at is giving API support for developers to say, hey, I want to prioritize or pump up frames over resolution. We can take that as good feedback for our platform.
What?
We're almost out of time. I want to give each of you 30 seconds to tell us what you're most excited about for the future of Hangouts on Google+. Let's start with you, Nicole. You can flip a coin if you want.
So as I started the session, I think we're in the really early parts of social and real-time communication. The thing I'm most excited about is the pursuit of enabling users to have conversations they didn't know they could be having. I think that's a very Google-like mission. Google's incredibly good at finding content that's interesting. I think that Hangouts make it possible to find people that are interesting. And I'm looking forward to coming back next year and seeing how we're doing there.
Very cool. Xi?
I think that video conferencing is still in the really early stages, and not everyone is comfortable automatically kind of doing that, right? Like people are like, oh, but I'm not wearing anything nice, or I don't have my makeup on, or you have all this sort of excuses right now. And I fully believe that in the coming years, it will just come natural. People won't think about it. In the past, people really noticed when you had a cell phone, or really noticed when you're kind of walking and talking to yourself, and you look kind of weird or whatever. And today, everyone has a cell phone, right? And video will become commonplace. Multi-way video, pulling people in, that fluidity will become commonplace. People aren't there yet, they're not used to it yet, but there's no question it's going to get there, and I think it's going to open up a lot of possibilities.
Very cool. Well, thank you both, and thank you to everyone here for joining us. We appreciate it. I want to mention before you go that there's a Hangouts code lab, I believe, in room 4. Room 2. This is room 2. Oh, in Code Lab 2, starting at 4 o'clock, which is 15 minutes from now. So lots of folks are going to be there. They're going to build a Hangout app from the ground up. You get a real good sense for how this works. Thanks again for coming. Thanks everyone online for joining us. As you leave, we're going to play a quick highlight reel from Hangout we did with President Obama. It's not often you get the president to use your technology. We had a lot of fun with it. We learned a lot about how to get citizens access to figures of power in this Hangout. So as you head on out, we'll play a little highlight reel of that. Thanks again for coming, everybody.